Good morning. I'd like to thank everybody for coming. Today's topic is currently quite a hot topic from the Orthodox world, and I do stand up with a little bit of trepidation. I say multiple shiurim a day, but on this one the stakes are a little bit higher, and try to do our best. I did ask permission from the yeshiva to give the shiur, but in no way please view anything stated here as a yeshiva position. It's a disclaimer. I'm going to try to go through this topic based on a clear presentation of applicable Jewish law, but for those who are not familiar with, currently right now in the frum world, there's quite a problem. There's a measles outbreak, for the most part, all across the East Coast. And to put in perspective, in Lakewood, New Jersey, there are currently 14 confirmed cases of measles by the Ocean County Medical Board. There's another 10 cases pending. In Brooklyn, New York, which includes Borough Park and community of Williamsburg, there are 24 cases of measles. In Muncie, New Square, Rockland County, there's an astounding 74 cases. Sake, New Jersey has 2, Detroit has 1, and it's believed that Chicago also has 1. Just put through those numbers, those are all numbers of Orthodox Jews who, unfortunately, Rahman al-Islam, have been stricken with measles. That adds up to 116 cases in the past month alone. I went through the stats from the CDC, and unfortunately, the entire United States of America for the year 2017 had 118 cases. So that means in the frum world today, in 1 month, there's accumulated an equivalent amount of cases that was seen in the entire United States of America last year. It's even more dire. In 2016, the U.S. only had 86 cases. Go back to 2012, there's only 55. Measles has been the disease that's been eradicated for the most part from not just the Western Hemisphere, but from a large part of the world, thank God, to vaccinations and the wonderful work that's been done in the medical community for decades upon decades. And anyone's old enough to remember what was it like in a world pre the measles vaccine, know that it was a very, very dangerous and definitely contagious disease where unfortunately lots of people lost their lives. You know, the world pre-vaccination was a very scary place. Polio, measles, mumps, rubella, all these things wreaked havoc across the world, and people suffered. People living through those times, the vaccinations came out, that generation, it was a no-brainer. Unfortunately, as the way of the world works, in the world today, there are many people that have not seen that world. New generations come up, internet comes up, and conspiracy theories, all different things have been spread, and people are really struggling for a grip. This generation, a lot of young people have developed many different ideas about it, some with some degree of merit, some without merit. I know somebody who was having this debate about how dangerous measles is, and the person said, oh, measles, it's probably nothing worse than chickenpox, just we haven't seen it. And the person responded back, obviously that's a total lack of medical information, but it's the opposite. People don't realize how dangerous measles is because, thank God, it's been, for the most part, eradicated. And I think this is a very important topic to put out clarity for ourselves, for our extended families, our children and grandchildren. It's important to also see the Orthodox perspective, or at least we'll present. You know, the secular world is already picking up on these stats, and there are multiple articles and papers on the East Coast talking about the measles outbreak in the Orthodox community. And it's important to know what the majority of halachic deciders stand on this issue. And we're going to go through today, up until there were quite a few proclamations, actually more coming out as each day goes on this topic. And I have some of them on your sheets. I really like to talk about three big areas today in the share. And I preface my remarks of saying I'm obviously only scratching the surface. This is a really major, big topic. And halakha has no shortage of areas discussed, and there's a lot discussed which people try to apply to this scenario, some correct, some maybe incorrect, and we'll try to give somewhat of a perspective of this issue in halakha. So I'm going to touch on three big areas today. Number one, just in general, what's the Torah's perspective? What's halakha's perspective on infectious disease? Number two, what's halakha's perspective on the medical community? I'm listening to doctors' orders. And finally, I'll get into the concept of vaccines themselves, together with, as I have someone on here, some tshuvos, some modern day answers, responsa, that current poskim, current halachic arbiters have put out in light of this measles outbreak. So the first thing, infectious disease. How does the Torah treat infectious disease? In fact, some might argue, and there's actually a basis for this in halacha, some might argue, look, people get sick all the time, and, you know, we obviously have to do our hishtadlus, do our physical means of rectifying the situation. But you know what? There isn't really much of a difference between one person being sick, or, I don't know, some disease being spread. Sick people are sick people. If you look in halacha, the Ramah seems to reject such an opinion in the following scenario. There's the Ramah in Yeridea, Kuf Tezayin. He writes, "Okasu sheyesh levarach min ha'ir kishedever be'ir." You know, if a plague, if a disease hits a community, the Ramah gives people instructions: you should get out of the city. No small thing. The Yishlatis min ha'ir b'tchilas hadever v'lo b'sofo. You should get out in the beginning, don't wait till the end. V'chol elu hadvarim heim yishum sakana. All these things that we talk about, you have to be careful about them because of sakana, for danger of death. The shomer nafsho yirchik mehem, person who guards his soul, who's careful about his life will be careful about it. Will distance himself from them. V'asa lismach anes. It is prohibited to rely. A miracle will happen. I'm a good Jew. A miracle will happen. Asa lismach anes. Or to put yourself in sakana for anything like this. So this is brought in the Shulchan Aruch Halacha by the Ramah, where there's a plague, where there's a disease in the community. The Ramah gives you very good advice. Get out. And don't wait to the end. Get out as soon as possible. Obviously, not every situation is easy for a person to extricate himself from a situation where there's a plague. But he says clearly, you can't rely on a nace. Shomer nafsho yirch, someone who's careful about his soul will be cognizant of this, take precautions. There's a Gemara that really predates this. Gemara in Ksubas. It's not on your sheets, but Gemara in Ksubas and Ayin Zayin days talks about infectious disease. And the Gemara goes one after another, different Amoraim, different sages in the times of the Gemara, that went out of their way to avoid any exposure to these diseases. It's quite fascinating. They wouldn't, what we know about contamination, how something could be caught, they wouldn't come to the same room, the same alleyway as somebody who was stricken with this disease. They wouldn't eat food grown near the area where this person was stricken with it. And the Gemara makes a point, Amora after Amora after Amora, how far they went to take safety precautions, not to chas v'shalom, to God forbid, catch a disease. The Gemara there does continue and talk about Rabbi Shiur ben Levi, who actually taught Torah to students who were afflicted by this disease. And all the Meforshim over there really ask, what right did he have to do that? And they have different answers to perhaps explain why that situation might be permitted. We'll see later maybe a similar case when we talk about doctors treating people with infectious disease. But what's definitely the impression you walk away from seeing that Gemara is you have to be very careful. The Torah does not treat infectious disease lightly. The Amoraim back in days of the Talmud were quite careful about infectious disease. There was nothing, excuse the pun, to sneeze at. Now, that's the Ramah. Rabbi Akiva Eger brought down over here, sorry it's in small print, Yeshiva only had this edition. Rabbi Akiva Eger over here, very interestingly, brings the words of a Rishon, Rabbeinu B'chaye, on the Torah. Rabbeinu B'chaye in the Torah talks about the situation when Hashem brought different type of plague to Korach, those people who were going against the leadership of Moshe Rabbeinu. Torah recounts how Hashem made an awesome miracle, how the earth opened its mouth, a huge earthquake, and swallowed alive Korach and all his followers. And Moshe warns people they should stand away, don't get near Korach and his people, because they're about to be smitten. And the Rabbeinu B'chai is wondering, why do you have to distance themselves? HaKadosh Baruch Hu, God can do whatever he wants. And you can have three people sitting there. The two on the edges will be swallowed away, and the guy in the middle will be, miraculously saved. Why do you have to get away from people? So the Rabbeinu B'chaye says very strong words. I'm not going to read it inside, strain too deep in people's eyes. But 3 lines from the bottom. That he says, when you have a situation where many people are being stricken by something, get away. Even the air of such a situation is dangerous. And he compares this to another case we have in Chumash of when the angels destroyed the city of Sodom, the wicked city of Sodom. Lot's wife was being saved and was told not to look back, not to stay back to any degree as running away. And she turned back and she turned into salt. And unfortunately, of different explanations for that phenomenon, and Rabbi Bachai understands it just simple. This was a plague happening in the world, and just by turning around, she exposed herself to this. It was in the air. She had to keep on going. She stopped. When a plague happens, don't get near it. Don't worry, I'm righteous. I'm good. Rabbi Akiva Eiger's bringing this to support the Ramah's assertion. When a plague happens, get out of town. Stay far away from it. He adds another concept in halacha that, unfortunately, when there's midas hadin, when there's a lack of divine mercy in the world, you got to be careful. It's a dangerous time. Don't play games. You should be extra cautious, extra afraid not to be around the situation when people are dying. And therefore, Akiva Eiger expands, really, in this Ramah, that people should be very careful when there's disease spreading. Disease spreading, don't say, look, I have my shots, I did my inshallah, I'm a good person. You have to be careful. When a disease breaks, this is even talking from a spiritual standpoint. From a spiritual standpoint, if there's a disease, stay far, far away. Now, if infectious disease is quite dangerous, quite lethal, and Amarayim, Ramah Paskining, you should leave, Akiva Eiger explaining it's even a spiritual malady which really is underlying over here. So let me ask a question. How could a doctor ever get involved with infectious disease? Every good Jewish mother wants her kid to be a doctor. I'm not sure they want them to be infectious disease doctors. Is it okay for a Jewish person to be involved in treating patients with infectious disease? This is a question posed, I found that Tzitz Eliezer lived in the last century, and he poskin that one is allowed to treat patients with infectious disease. I was reading a story from a Jewish doctor actually, who recounted that he caught measles not in his youth, but he caught measles as a doctor treating patients who were stricken with measles. And this Jewish doctor said it was the closest he came in his lifetime to death. 105, 106 fever. He really was on the brink. Thankfully, he was saved. He lived to tell the story. But obviously, it's a dangerous profession to treat people with infectious disease, even with, I'm sure, whatever precautions are out there, accepted protocol in American medicine, but nothing's foolproof. And treating somebody with infectious disease is dangerous. But I found the famous actual doctor, Dr. Avram Kier. People in this room actually know of him. He writes in his Sefer Nishmas Avram, he discussed this question with one of the prime students of Shlomo Zalman Auerbach by Neuwirth, who's famous for his Sefer Shmir Shabbos Kol Chasa. And both he and Rav Neuwirth felt you really have to take it one step further than what the Tzitz Eliezer said. If you're a doctor, this is what you signed up for. You're the one who has medical experience, who can help people. You know what? You have really an obligation to see what you can to help them. And the same way, hey, if you're signed up to be a cop and there's a shooting going on in the school, you better go in. What are you being paid for? You're there to save lives. Similarly, look, if you're a doctor, not only is one allowed to, they went a step further. They said, look, one really should. It's really the right thing to do to help save people. And one even would be allowed, they wouldn't necessarily be allowed to kill themselves first, but put themselves in some degree of jeopardy to help other people. That's part of the carrying the MD on your license plate. Another interesting shaila, which is very apropos, unfortunately, today. What happens in a situation where there is infectious disease in a community? And unfortunately, there are people stricken with this. Currently, in this situation, a guy, had measles last week, walked into Lakewood's yeshiva. Lakewood's yeshiva has 7,000 people. This person wasn't a student in the yeshiva. He came to visit. He walked in just to one of their base medrashas. Lakewood, if anyone hasn't been there, it's one of the most amazing sites. You have building after building, base medrash after base medrash, study halls filled with scholars. He walked into one building. Do you know how many people go through that building every day? The Ocean County Medical Office is putting out, anyone in that building, Beis Shalom, between 1:15 and 6:45 could have been exposed to measles. Easily could be 1,000 people. Easily. They have the whole list of where the person, he went to Ellie's Pizza, he went to, here. Unfortunately, one person with measles actually went to the DMV. There's multiple DMVs in Ocean County / Lakewood that had to close their doors because they were infected by the disease. So it's a dangerous thing. It's unfortunately, people spread it, people go from place to place. Really here in Florida, it's a very dangerous phenomenon. Because we know Florida is a destination, we have Jews visiting from all over the world. And unfortunately, this yeshiva, amongst other places, are already being proactive. It's probably only a matter of time, God forbid, but before you have to plan, someone might come to Florida. Well, pretty likely. And precautions have to be already in place what to do. So people are going all over the place. So issues are brought up. Can one bar a person? Now the person who has measles themselves, that's pretty obvious that one should be able to bar them. Not only that, if you look on your sheets, the third Maramakom, it's a Sefer HaChasidim. Sefer HaChasidim writes, Lifnei Iver lo sitei mechshol. The Torah has a prohibition. You should not put a stumbling block in front of someone else. What's included in that prohibition? Sefer Hasidim, quite an early commentary, writes, Shol yirchatz adam shu mukesh shchen, a person who has a disease shouldn't wash im Yehudi acher el imkin yodil. You can't be with another person in a bathhouse, somewhere you can spread the disease, unless you notify other people. Shenemar v'yahavta re'acha kamocha. Torah says, love thy neighbor. But more than that, v'ksiv lo samod odam re'acha. If one doesn't notify someone else, lo samod odam re'acha, one shouldn't stand in the death of someone else. You're responsible. If something, God forbid, happens, your disease spreads, you're responsible. Of course, there's an obvious, very clear, if you are stricken with this disease, you have to notify people. Because one of the fears somewhat from communities, there are more people dealing with it, but since people took a position of being an anti-vaxxer, so they don't want to come out and tell people where they're at. They're just keeping their kids home. That's quite dangerous, right? When we know the disease by nature is, till you know you have it, you're already contagious. So where were you in that timeline the past few days? You have to tell people. It has to be made public. No question about it. Black and white in Allah. But a question that was raised, what about, I believe the situation was a doctor who was treating people with infectious disease. I believe the case was not where they yet knew if the doctor had the disease or not. The question was raised, can you borrow from shul, from yeshiva? The particular question was shul. Did someone bar somebody who might be exposed to the disease from coming in? This question was addressed by Reb Chaim Palgai in a Sefer Nishmas Kol Chai. It's brought down. The Sifta brings it in Subas, Ayin Zayin and Beis. And he writes, based on the Rebbeinu B'chaya that Rabbi Kiva Eger quoted earlier, when it comes to infectious disease, we have to be very nervous. The Ramah's right, get out of the town. When there's infectious disease, he balgum mitoch eida hazos. You can't rely on anything. You can't rely, look, we're righteous, we're davening. Let's reach out. Let's let him in. You have to be fearful. You have to take proper safety, health precautions. If there's a chance that somebody is carrying the disease, you can't let him in. Chaim Palgi, Sefer Nishmas Kol Chai, to be the exact spot. So, you definitely see, I believe, from these elements of halachic literature, the Torah does not treat lightly infectious disease. Just the opposite. The Torah has a positive commandment. You have to go very far and be very careful when it comes to infectious disease. The Torah's position is not to treat it lightly. Just the opposite. We're very careful when it comes to any degree of sakana. As we'll see soon, we know the halacha of a suffix of pikuach nefesh, even not sure about it, but there's a chance that someone's life could be at stake. Of course, we violate Shabbos, we'll violate any mitzvah in the Torah, any aver in the Torah. We'll violate in order to save a person's life. Orthodox Jews are famous for their Hatzalah organization which runs to save people's lives. The reason why we rely on Hatzalah versus just call 911, we do both. But in many communities, the response time for Hatzalah is much quicker. Do you know why? Because religious Jews are quite motivated. No one's getting paid. Hatzalah is a volunteer organization. But they realize, based on our religious observance, that life is so valuable. We'll do absolutely everything in our power. People talk to someone who's a Hatzalah person, one of the most amazing heroes of modern Orthodox society. People drop whatever they're doing, that they're with their family, they're in the middle of shul, in the middle of davening. They'll drop whatever they're doing, run, help potentially save a Jewish life. That's the Orthodox perspective that's a Jewish perspective, on value of life, on taking whatever precautions there is to save life. That's what we do. And if anyone thinks that infectious disease is treated lightly by Torah, it's just the opposite. On top of that, next area. How does the Torah view medical advice? How does Torah view? So, there's a Betherish pasuk in Torah, Rabbi, that we are supposed to follow medical advice. We are supposed to, that's part of what we call the Shabbos, the normal actions taken to see to it that a person's healed from a sickness. Obviously, as a Jewish person, when a person is afflicted by a sickness, there's really a two-pronged response. There's one, look, we have to do whatever we can medically to to help out the situation. In fact, you look in the world, I gave an example of Hatzalah, but some of the best medical referral services are actually referrals run by Orthodox Jews and Hasidim. People could be, they look like, wow, this guy probably doesn't even have an internet at his house. This guy probably never went to college. But some of these people are tremendously experts in medicine, and they'll help out any person. You need medical advice, I've researched it, this and that, I'll tell you. The connections, wonderful. The medical world is a door that we always, find open, whether you get a Jewish doctor or not. But medicine has always been an area where Jews have taken advantage of the ability to receive care to help rectify a situation. At the same time, we know that Chas v'Shalom, anyone never sick, there's a spiritual component too. You daven, you pray, you say Tehillim, you reflect internally, hey, maybe there's something spiritually you want with me too. But the Jewish response always is a balance. Of course, I respond spiritually, but you also respond practically by finding the best doctor, finding the best situation, and that's a way to do hishtadlus, to help save a person's life. The Magen Avram brings an interesting question. Shulchan Aruch talks about, let's say it's a situation of Shabbos. So we mentioned before, on Shabbos, a person has to violate Shabbos. You get in the car, go in the ambulance. If a person needs immediate medical attention, you drop everything on Shabbos and take care of it. Shabbos, yes, even Shabbos. Drop whatever you're doing, take care of it. Let's say it's a suffix. Let's say you went, one doctor said your life is in jeopardy, but then another doctor there said, no, I think you're fine. What does one do? There's differing opinions in the medical world. One doctor said your life is in jeopardy. The other doctor said, I think you're okay. You say, look, it's Shabbos. So you know what? I'll take the opinion, I'll put my life on the opinion that everything will be okay. I'll keep Shabbos and it will be all good. It's a clear halacha in Shulchan Aruch in Siman Shin Chav Ches. Absolutely not. You're 100% Safek Nefashos L'Hakol. When it comes to a person's life, we 100% take the opinion that your life might be at stake, and we desecrate Shabbos in that situation. Yes. Now, okay, so even with a suffix, even where a case where we're not sure, one doctor goes one way, the other doctor goes the other way, we're Machal Shabbos. We tell you, go and get in the ambulance, get in the car, go to the hospital. What happens if the guy doesn't want to go? Let's say the guy says that, look, this doctor said this. It's not that I think one doctor is better than the other doctor, but look, I have a doctor that says it's okay to stay here. So the halacha, the Ramah says, is kofinoso. To whatever degree you're able to, you force the guy. That's how far halacha goes. If there's a suffix, should I listen to this medical advice? One doctor saying one way, another doctor saying the other way. You know what? I'll rely on the fact I can just sit here. Shabbos anyway. I'll ruin everybody's Shabbos. Halacha is you're supposed to go to the hospital. Not only that, the Magen Avram goes further. We force the guy to go. That's how far the Magen Avram viewed doctor's orders and the potential for a medical crisis. Furthermore, I found there's an Aruch HaShulchan, Siman Taf Reish Yud Ches, Sif Daled, talking about fasting on Yom Kippur. Obviously, fasting on Yom Kippur is a tough thing. You have a person who's not in well shape, and the doctor tells him you cannot fast Yom Kippur. And the Jew says, look, I spent my entire life every single Yom Kippur I fasted. I can't eat Yom Kippur. I can't. Can't do it. What do you do? You try forcing him. His will is much stronger. Well, you should probably read him the words of the Aruch HaShulchan. The Aruch HaShulchan writes very strongly, in such a situation, doctors say that one should not fast on Yom Kippur. But this person is, no, I'm going to do it. The words of the Aruch HaShulchan are, Chas v'shalom, this person passes on. You're mischayev b'nafsho. You are responsible for your death. Ve'ein lo chelek olam haba. And you're losing out a portion in the world to come. Medical advice is so chashuv in its situation. I think I know better. I think I'll be okay. You think you'll be okay? The doctor's telling you can't fast. I can't. I know better. I'm sorry. He's got the MD after his name. He says you should not fast on Yom Kippur. If you decide to fast, and God forbid, you pass away, don't expect to be going up.
Going down.
Yes?
Make a difference with the firm or not firm doctor?
Interesting question, but the simple answer is no. Right? Medical advice we take, doesn't matter what size yarmulke the doctor wears, whether he's Jewish, not Jewish, as long as he's a respected doctor, that his opinion is something that's respected, certified in this. No. There are shilas, what would be if you have one mumcha, one expert doctor, versus someone who's not on that stature, who do you go with? Okay, they're different things. But a medical opinion is a medical opinion. Now, it might be true, your point is a very good point, that some shilas are best asked to a doctor who understands the Jewish community and understands what people are dealing with. It's important for the person to understand it, but we want his medical advice. So medically, if you're not healthy, you can't fast. Not healthy, you have to get immediate medical attention, even though it's Shabbos. 100%, one has to follow doctor's orders. And this is something, especially in this current debate, where there are people who perhaps didn't even graduate high school. But definitely, there are people who didn't go to college, definitely people who didn't go to medical school, and they've become experts in medicine. I'll put that in yeshiva terms. It's like somebody reading an art school Gemara and seeing a psak from Moshe Feinstein and saying, you know what? I think a little different. Hello? Do you know who Moshe Feinstein was? He spins shas on his fingertip. And you read an art school Gemara one time, and you think you're ready to argue? Well, havdil, in the world of medicine, you have to know who you are. You have to know your credentials. It's very easy to be a smart yeshiva guy, and I'm a smart guy, I learn Gemara, I have an opinion. Okay? Where does that opinion rank in halacha? Well, in halacha, in Shulchan Aruch, it might be pretty good. You might be more knowledgeable than a doctor, depending who your doctor is. But in medicine, you better know your place. Do you know medicine? Are you familiar? Not so simple. So that's a Torah's view, I believe, on following medical advice. Third area, I'd like to get more close into vaccination. I've been bombarded with material. People knew I was giving this share. I got pages and pages from some anti-vaxxer on many interesting things over here. And one of them was a halakhic opinion written against halakhic. First, someone presented a halachic opinion why to vaccinate. Somebody else posited a quote-unquote halachic opinion not to vaccinate. One of their proofs was from a tshuva from Moshe. It's not on your sheets. Unfortunately, I just found this late last night. Tshuva from Moshe, actually interesting. It talks about a situation where a person is not well and is not up to fasting Yom Kippur. But if he would get some medicine, actually there wasn't oral, it was through a shot. If he would get some medicine, he'd be able to fast. Should one do that? That was the actual tshuva that Moshe was doing. At the end of it, so Moshe says no. One does not take medicine just to fast, just to have the ability to fast. If you can't fast, you can't fast. Even in Yom Kippur. And Moshe there at the end of the tshuva makes a statement. You know what? You don't just play around with medicine orally and definitely a shot. You don't just play around with medicine, just give it for these two. You only do it when you're sick. If you're not sick, we don't do it. Which is actually an interesting idea. You know, it's my own Rabbi. Shiva held different situations. You want to give a girl, put her on birth control medicine to regulate her period. Wasn't such a big fan of it pre your wedding. If she's not sick, everything's fine. I can just, don't just take medicine just to control your body. If you're sick, you do. So the person wanted to claim, say, you know what? I can take vaccinations. Right now, you're not sick. What you're doing when you take a vaccination is you're injecting some small degree of that illness, or with it, other things into your body. How do you have the right to do that? I have Moshe Feinstein backing me up. So I'm sorry, but that's not how you learn. You don't have Moshe backing you. There's a big chiluk between the two cases. If Moshe's talking a case, there's nothing wrong. So you want to inject yourself with medicines and this. Moshe says, I don't advise it. You're not sick, you don't take medicine. But this is a clear and present danger. We know there's something called the measles. We know that if you take this vaccination, 93, 97%, you should be okay. That is B'chlal Refuah. That is included in the Shmarkim Nafshasech. Of course one should do that. Moshe Feinstein was not anti-vaccination. My Rabbi, who had the same shita in general about medicine, was not anti-vaccination. Big difference between the two. That's not mistaken medicine, it's mistaken halal. Similarly, there's Gemara in Baba Kama. I gotta be careful. I learned this with my son. He's sitting here. Famous Gemara. Gemara says, if you leave a pitcher in a public domain and someone else comes and trips on it. Famous Gemara, beginning of third parak of Baba Kama, so if you break someone else's property, I, the tripper, and potter, I have to pay for damages. Then who's it ba? But if I get damaged by the shards of that thing sitting in Rosh Hashanah, Baal Chavas Chai B'Nisko. So then the owner of the pitcher who put it there in public domain is Chai, is responsible for damages. So two ramifications. If I trip on something that's placed in Rosh Hashanah, I'll have to pay for the damage I caused, and he has to pay me if I got damaged. The Gemara has a question. Gemara asked the my potter, why am I exempt, I the tripper, exempt from paying for damages? I should look where I'm going. And Gemara goes on with a few different answers. They give three different scenarios of the case. So I couldn't look where I'm going. Then the Gemara comes out very interesting human phenomenon. People don't look where they're going in the streets. Gemara said this years ago, even before cell phones. So, okay, the Gemara has a discussion about it. Tosfos over there asked an excellent question. The Gemara only challenged the first halacha. Why am I, the tripper, exempt if I break this thing? What about the second halacha? If I should look where I'm going, why is he responsible when I get damaged? I should look where I'm going. Tosos over there on the side of your pages says a very important idea. He says it's in two spots over there in Balakama. The yoser lishal lishmar shlo yazik mishlo yuzak. A person has to be more careful that he doesn't damage others more than the care and concern he has to protect himself. If I put something in the Rosh Hashanah, so or the guy who puts it in Rosh Hashanah, I was the victim. But the guy who put something in Rosh Hashanah, so look, he's got to be careful that, he should protect his things. He doesn't want his things damaged. He knows to be more careful of, don't damage other people. I thought this principle is perfectly appropriate for our situation. You have some degree of doubt here. What to do? Okay, let's even grant you're a little nervous about what might be inside those vaccines. You're nervous about it. So you're going to protect yourself and your family. Okay? Look, you want to take that position? Okay? We've talked about it somewhat till now. But what about the fact that you might be hurting others by not taking that vaccine? Okay? You could be susceptible to catch it, and you could spread it. What about that? Toso says, Yosel ish lishmar shlom yazik, Yosel lishmar yazik. You have to be extra careful to be sure you don't damage others more than the protection you have, that you yourself should be safe.
The guy who's anti-vaxxing, he thinks that he's putting himself at risk, so he don't have to put himself at risk to not damage someone else.
So Baruch Hashem, my son prepared me for your question. My son said to me, Daddy, what's your proof? The Gemara is talking in a one-dimensional case. You want to measure two things. You want to measure the protection you have not to get damaged versus the protection the care you should have not to damage other people. The Gemara seemingly was not talking a case where I myself might get hurt. Of course I have to protect you very well, but not in the case where I'm getting hurt. Gemara wasn't talking about that. Rabbi, I don't have a riot to that case.
You're getting hurt, the base is breaking.
So I say back, I think I do. Depends how you view it. You can't come here and prove to me with any concrete evidence you know for sure something bad is happening when you take that vaccine. It doesn't exist. As people who know in medicine, the only report that was ever published to back a claim of autism together with vaccinations was proved to be a total fraud. The person behind the claim was defrocked, his medical license was taken away. He defrauded people. He outright lied. He didn't make a mistake. It was a fraud. There is no medical evidence to connect the two. At best, what you could argue to me in halacha is you have some degree of suffix in your mind. Because obviously, a family that, has the challenge in life of an autistic child is definitely a big challenge. It's not something which is an easy thing to deal with. And people who've developed that perspective, that they're afraid and they blame it on vaccinations, look, in a situation like that, you can't blame people. People who've suffered in life through that or directly know people, look, okay, that's where, look, they might be entitled to their opinion based on their emotions. I don't know. Maybe.
Is that the only?
But they can't say for sure it's true. There's no medical evidence to back it up. So at best, it's a suffix.
Is that their only time?
So what we're dealing with over here is a suffix on both sides. So you know what the din is? When you have to be more careful not to damage others, whatever protection you want to give to your family and yourself, you have to be more, but you also have to be cognizant of other people. And you can't say for sure that you know that you're getting damaged by taking that shot. There's no medical evidence for such a thing. So that being said, this current situation, and I want to be careful how I tread over here the last few minutes. be honest, it's quite nervous about giving such a share because there are great rabbis on both sides of the equation. I'll get to in a moment. The majority, which we clearly see here, I put in the sheets, are pro-vaccinations. But there are a few, including one of the, I recognize myself as one of the Gedolim, also quite knowledgeable in halacha, is officially from the other camp, supporting the position of anti-vaccination. And it's a tricky thing. But there was a piece published, there were 2 letters, to my knowledge, published by, with the names of definitely one big gadol, together with a few other Rosh Yeshivas, that supported the position of anti-vaccination, supported strongly the position that you can't exclude these people from your schools. This was all written 3 years ago, pre the outbreak. Really, this issue has been something that's been brewing for years within the Orthodox community. And unfortunately, it's reared its ugly head now when it's already a thing. And it's been debated before. But probably actually a good, if there's something good that could come out of such a crisis like this, it's that now it's really in the forefront and it's really heavily being debated. And the tide is changing. People realize they're not being let into school, and Lakewood sent home kids who are not vaccinated. Go home. They're taking very strong positions. They have to. There already is a measles outbreak. And it's really coming to the fore right now, this whole situation. I checked up. I'm not going to name him by name, but the big proponent of the big Rosh Yeshiva Gadol, who's behind the anti-vaccination, or his wife, who's behind the anti-vaccination position within the Orthodox world. My wife is good friends with his granddaughter. His granddaughter herself vaccinates her kids. She asked her father what to do. Who's Chashav Rosh Yeshiva in his own right. But she also reported that her grandfather, who took this position, right now backed off this position and is not sure what to do. He's besuffic. He went from being an advocate of anti-vaxxers to saying he's really not sure what to do. It's already backing down to some degree.
What's his reason not to?
These people take up the opinion that vaccinations are harmful. The anti-vaxxer position, that vaccinations are harmful, and it may not be the correct hishtadlos to give your kids shots. However, the majority opinion is clearly not like that. And to be honest, I'll say it out straight. Most people, even in the Orthodox world today, who are part of this anti-vaxxer situation, they're not taking the position because this rabbi said so. It's unfortunate, but that's not the reason. They're taking it because that's the way they believe. That's the way the wife believes. That's the way the husband believes. And these rabbis will sometimes use as pawns or justifications for their positions. But they're not doing it because they hold that rabbi. They hold on to everything else he says. Really? This is not really a rabbinic-driven problem for the most part. This is something that people adapted. Let me just finish up a few things. I'll save lots of time for comments. I have on the sheets here Moshe Sternbuch. Moshe Sternbuch is the head of the Bedatz Eida Charedis of Yerushalayim. Could be there's some people in this room that don't agree with everything they say, but this one you will. Chayiv kol av ledoeg lechosim b'no bito miyad. Person has to vaccinate their kids right away. There in Israel, there already has been multiple cases of death. Firstly, he's writing, it's a father's obligation. Listen here. Decisions cannot be just made by a person's wife. Chayiv kol av. It's a father's responsibility to take care of it. Don't tell me it's what your wife holds. It's your responsibility. And he says further, Ve'ena av bailum no meham achisa. Father doesn't have the halachic right to say, I'm not giving it to my kid. It's not within your halachic power. You don't have to say. In particular, sort of the idea we mentioned before, because you're hurting other people. And he says the Kodesh Baruch Hu should remove all the problems. Rav Elyashiv, all the years Rav Elyashiv was the preeminent posek in Yerushalayim. He had two prominent Talmidim. Fascinating story. One was of Yosef Efrati, who was an Israeli. Today he runs a whole wonderful organization with Hilchos Shemitah, huge Talmud Chacham, Israeli with Strymel. The other one is an American. He probably looks just as Haredi as anybody else. If you know his background, David Morgenstern actually went to MIT. Started off life on the college campus, MIT, quite respectable, no? Ended up going to Yerushalayim, and you never recognize him today with his Haredi dress, but he went to MIT. He was Rabbi Elyashiv's co-chief Talmud. He writes a detailed tshuva just written this past week upon the request actually of Rav Kanarik from Lakewood, where he clearly delineates that Rabbi Elyashiv's position was 100% pro-vaccination. Rabbi Dr. Akiva Tatz is also well-known in the medical field, and the Kier of world, and Shivas Or Sameach, asked the same question to Rabbi Elyashiv, got the same response. 100% backing vaccination. Shmuel first, Talmud of Moshe Feinstein, one of the chief Talmidim of Moshe Feinstein, huge posek in Chicago, spearheaded, one of the first to issue a strong psak on the bottom of your sheets in English, clearly stating 100% people should be vaccinated. It's a chiyuv. He actually quotes the Sefer Hasidim in the PS. I left it off your sheets. If you have measles, you have a chiyuv to tell other people about it. Just last night, I heard from Moshe Meir Weiss, Talmud of Moshe Feinstein, who stated that he asked Rav David Feinstein, probably preeminent posek here in America, who said unequivocally 100% people have to be vaccinated. So the positions, I believe that it's always important in the Jewish world to have debate, right? We've been fighting for generations, for centuries about everything. From the times of the Gemara Ad Hayom Hazeh, through debate, through intellectual debate, that is, through halachic debate, we come to our conclusions of what HaKadosh Baruch Hu, what God wants of us, what's the halacha. This is an issue like all many issues that, look, we have to treat seriously, we have to look into, we have to ask, many different shilas. My father-in-law got a shilah this week. A co-wife works in a school. Right now she's pregnant, and she tested herself. She got tested, and she got vaccinated years ago, but she's vulnerable. It's one of the small percentages that didn't work. She's vulnerable, and she works in a Hasidic school where there are kids who aren't vaccinated. What should she do? She was told to stay home from work. These things are affecting people's lives, people's livelihoods. It's a big problem. But the more clarity that we have in halacha, the more we turn to our halachic authorities and see what they say, what they talk about, and voice the majority opinion, it's something which Bez Hashem should help all of Klal Yisrael, that no one should get sick, everyone should be healed, and the Rofei Chobasar, Kadosh Baruch Hu, could change all this in a moment, and we sure hope that the measles outbreak is no longer. Thank you very much. I'll gladly take questions.